Okay, Brother Frederick, my Uncle Frederick.
You do this for anybody else? I mean,
No, well, I didn't have the camera before we started this. This is one of the things I got it for. I've only done that for about three months now.
Yeah.
It's been the last, what, half a dozen visits.
What is your object for it? Is you're going to put it all together and play it for the family?
It's like a movie. It's like a movie. It's the Francis Andrews, This Is Your Life, Francis. It's like a TV show, you know. This is your life.
It's Francis Blanche.
Blanche Cox Andrews, yeah. And of course, it's a concordance to your autobiography, which we've got here. 150 pages that you wrote 20 years ago.
I can't help thinking that it would be a bestseller.
Oh, I'm sure it will. They'll be mobbing the DVD stores to get a copy.
Right.
So that's yes, I think it's a wonderful. I was just amazed at the quality and the way that this is an inexpensive little camera. It's I mean, these days cameras go up, up into the thousands of dollars. This is a $150 Radio Shack camera, and it does a fine job of recording. Well, computer-sized image. It wouldn't be for the silver screen, but it would, for a video, it's perfect, and it does sound and picture, and it get good quality. So I think it's wonderful, a wonderful investment. So, but today I wanted to get into a discussion of your brother, because we haven't really talked much. When you talk about even Waterloo and college and Detroit and all those other things, and you say this in your autobiography, your brother doesn't really play much of a role in your life in the early years. But so I want to, what little bits there are, I'd like to talk about. Was there sibling rivalry when you grew up? Because he was 3 years younger, and he must have been the jewel of the family. He was the boy.
They didn't operate that way. We were so different, and it never clashed about anything. And I think it had been the other way around. If he had been the oldest, it would have made it slight different. But our family didn't go in for any of that. And at least, as a youth, it never occurred to me to think of him in anything. He just...
Your pesky little brother.
Yeah, and he wasn't even pesky. He had his group.
Yeah.
And I had my group, and his interests and my interests. I mean, they never clashed. We saw each other at the dinner table, and that's it. And I never had any, as you would maybe in a sister, confidences and talking and all that. I never talked anything seriously to him that I can remember. Now, maybe I did.
He was a little bit too much younger than you. That 3.5 years younger
is too much.
It's a little bit too much.
Yes. He was like 4 grades below. See, when I was in high school, he was still in the 8th grade. I mean, when I graduated from high school, he was still in the 8th grade. And it just two worlds, completely different. We never, and yet there was no antipathy. My parents never looked at it that way,
Now, how did your parents see him growing up? They didn't want him to be a farm boy.
Oh, there was never any. We didn't. The most we ever, any of the family ever contacted a farm was when we went out to get eggs or something.
Yeah.
Fresh from the chicken.
So as he was growing up, did he have ideas about what he wanted to do?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Did he go to school? You went to college and prep school. Did he go to?
I really don't think he. I know he didn't graduate. He didn't go very long if he did go. But and then we had hometown college, and he may have gone. I don't know much about him. I really don't. He, I was thinking the other day that about how my parents both died, and he died, so they're all gone, and I just don't know two bits about him. I don't know whether.
As you were grew into being an adult and had your own family, you still talked to your father until he died, and you talked to your mother quite a number of years later. I mean, all the way out into California. Did you ever talk about Frederick and how he was doing? And
no.
With her?
With who?
With your mother.
With my mother? If anything, if he did anything, exciting, I can't remember whether he seemed. I have a vague memory that he went over to Europe on a trip, and I can't remember what he did for a living. But I know that.
Was he artistic or sports-minded or a big reader at all?
He would be considered a student, but only he had oodles of friends. And what they did, I don't know.
Yeah, he was social.
I haven't any idea.
Now you tell this in your autobiography here. You tell this lovely, heart-rendering, romantic tale of his girlfriend Frances, who was apparently the love of his life from childhood until he died. Frances, who he fell head over heels in love with when he was still back at Waterloo in high school.
And it's in there?
Yes.
I don't have any memory of that.
And then
I don't know who the other Frances could be.
Well, you met her, but it was much later on, and that he wanted to marry her coming out of school as a young man. And she said no, she wanted to sow her wild oats, and she went off to California. And you talk in the story here about one time when she called a few years later and said she needed him, and she was pregnant. He drove out to California to get her, took her back to Chicago where he was living, and he was willing to either marry her at the time or simply to take the child and adopt it and raise this child that wasn't his.
Well, I can't remember any of that's written in there.
Okay.
Either, and if it'll come. Maybe it'll come back to me if I read it.
But now, so what went on according to your autobiography here was that he came out to California too on his own after you and Dickie did. So probably in the early '50s, and. Presumably you and he had talked over the phone, and you'd said, wow, it's great out here. Come on out and see what it's like. And he did. And he brought along with him Marge, who he had married in Chicago.
I had no memory right now of anything about any of that.
Okay. Well, Marge, I remember growing up, we used to go visit maybe once every couple months.
Maybe that will all come back into my memory if I read myself.
Patty and I hated to go visit him because it was boring, and there were just the dogs, and they all wanted to go licky face with the dogs, big huge monster dogs, and they would jump all over us kids.
This startles me because I didn't remember that he lives and to play with you or know you.
Oh yeah.
And Patty.
Yeah, but that was when we were teenagers.
Part of it is that I never talked to anybody about it, and I never. I don't know why. I just don't. I'm just absolutely blank on that.
Yeah. Well, it would have been in the early 50s. Probably I was like 12, 13, 14 years old, and Patty getting into being a young teenager. And that's when he moved out, and he moved to Santa Clara, I think, initially. And we went over and visited with him a number of times. They moved. They had no children of their own. They just had a couple of dogs, so they were apartment dwellers basically. They weren't trying to raise a family. They were just they were, you know,
I wonder
adults.
what he died of. I have no idea.
Well, and here you just say he died in his sleep. No, well, you say he died sort of a broken heart. I mean, the story goes on that he and Marge had a life for whatever 10, 20 years, and they moved away from because it was cheaper. Moved away from Silicon Valley in the '60s and moved to Reno, Nevada, which was perfect for him because he was a genial guy. He was
Isn't that amazing? I can't remember him knowing all that.
He was a very friendly guy.
Oh, he was charming.
And so he made a perfect
Everybody loved him.
appliance salesman at Sears, which he did for years and years.
Oh, I remember. Now that rang a bell.
Yeah, I still have his card from that.
Yeah, he worked for Sears.
And he dealt blackjack, which is also something you have to be fairly friendly as a dealer. You can't have a bad day. You know, you have to smile at everybody and say, "Oh, you win again, sir," or "You lose again," with a smile on your face. So, but he got along really well there. But eventually, Marg died of cancer, fairly young, probably in their 50s.
Now, were my parents gone when that happened?
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
a lot more. It's just blank. All that is just blank.
Yeah.
Because I really wasn't in contact. Anything I knew, I heard over the phone. Because that's the only contact I had with the family at home, see. And you know how you don't.
Well, your father died before you came to California.
Mm-hmm.
And then your mother came, I mean, your family came out. Frederick came out probably in 50 or 51, and your mother likewise about the same time. In fact, maybe they came out, you know, maybe it was a concerted effort for both of them.
I only have a couple of memories of my mother when she came, and I remember which house it was. It was in Grosse Pointe. Is that?
No.
No.
No, it wasn't actually. It was Lewiston.
Lewiston.
Yeah.
Right.
And she stayed in Patty's room, I remember. She stayed just for a few days there, and then she found her job with Mr. Turvin over in Sunnyvale and moved there.
Right.
And Frederick and Marg moved into Santa Clara, and I don't remember the actual juxtaposition at times there, but he eventually moved to Reno. But then and Marg died, and so then he was alone in Reno.
I have no memory of that at all.
And then the story of Francis gets picked up again here because he went back. He took Marg for some reason back to, or maybe they got confused. Maybe it was your mother. Back to Waterloo for burial. Why would he take Marg to Waterloo? She wasn't a Waterloo person. She was from Chicago.
Just to have a family, probably.
Where was your mother? Was your mother taken back? Did he take your mother back when she died?
Oh, take her back from where? Where was she?
From Sunnyvale to Waterloo.
Well, it's only 3 miles.
Sunnyvale to Waterloo is 3,000 miles. Sunnyvale, California.
Oh, Sunnyvale, California.
Yeah.
Where is that?
Next to San Jose. So just say San Jose, basically.
But we had one in Nebraska, too.
Oh, okay. So, anyway, so there he is back in Waterloo at a funeral, and he runs into his old high school sweetheart, Frances, who in the meantime had married and had kids and so forth, and they struck up a relationship again.
That's all in.
Yes, it is.
In my diary.
It is. It is.
Have no memory.
And so they started.
I can't imagine you told me all.
A love affair again by telephone, because she was back in Waterloo, where she started, and he was out in Reno. But you say that he was doing it with a broken heart because he was too old for it, and he just didn't have the energy to pursue.
Right.
You know, to get married again and to start off a new life and maybe have to go back to Waterloo and live there, and he just wasn't ready for all of that.
What amazes me is if 2 hours ago, if you had asked me what I knew about my brother, I would have told you that I didn't know anything about him, that from the time I left at 18 years old to go away to school, I didn't any more than say hello to him. I didn't realize that I knew anything about him. Just before you started telling me all this. I've written it myself.
And I remember when you and Patty went off. This all took place when I was off. I was always off somewhere, either in the Army or.
Well, you traveled around the United States.
Yeah, I was always traveling for some reason or other. So I remember that you and Patty, though, took the train up, or drove up, I don't remember which, that way, to his apartment in Reno, and you
to his apartment,
where he lived in Reno, Nevada, and you had to clear out his house. Patty helped with this.
I've got a big memory of your talking. It's bringing something back.
Yeah.
It's not clear. Yeah.
You were living at Glendale at the time, and you and Patty went back there and took care of the business that had to be taken care of to close his affairs down. And so that really was the end of that episode. I don't know how Patty would probably remember more of these detail, although Patty's memory's not a lot better than yours is about a lot of this stuff.
Isn't that amazing? So much. I would have said I didn't have any contact with him from 18 years old.
Well, when he was living in Santa Clara, we used to go. I swear it was probably a monthly visit.
You remember him?
Oh yeah.
That just amazes me.
Yeah. It was a monthly visit that we would do. As I say, it was sheer,
yeah,
painful for Patty and I to do that because we didn't. They had a swimming pool, and I think they used to have us go out in the swimming pool because they always lived in apartment land where there were pools and so forth. And so in the summer times we'd go over and we'd just say, we want to go down to the pool. So they'd just put us in the swimming pool, and then, you could talk to them.
How old were you then?
Probably 13, 14, 15 years old, something like that.
An hour ago, if you had asked me, I would have thought you never had any contact in your life with him, because he wasn't in my life. I have no memory of any of that.
Yeah. If I hadn't been away, it would have been interesting. Looking back, I would have liked to have kept a relationship a little bit more when I grew up, because I used to love going to Reno, Nevada, and blackjack dealing and all that kind of stuff. So, but I think that was long afterward. Yeah, it was long after that period. As I say, this was Glendale, so it was it was before, but probably while I was in college or in the Army that all this happened. One of those two. I was either down in Arizona or off in Germany in the Army. So that he was probably 10 or 15 years out in California or Nevada, one of those two. I don't know. How did he and Dickie get along?
As far as they
never even met.
Oh no. They must have. But I have no mental picture of the two of them together or talking about him or anything. He was just a non-person almost to me. Mm-hmm. Just the name, because I never had any emotional contact with him. As I was growing up, I was way ahead of him. Yeah. And you know how you got a kid brother, but you don't talk about what's on your mind. And then I go away for forever because I was, after I graduated from high school, I never lived at home except one summer. and then I was out in Detroit, and he never came. I never saw him.
I know how that is because I've gone to a lot of high school reunions with Patty.
Mm-hmm.
We've both gone, and it's always amazing to me that, you know, here we are 50 years later, 60 years, you know, 50 years later, and if I meet, generally there are groups of graduates at that time. It's not just one class, but it's 3 or 4 together. And Patty and I just went to one recently where it was everybody from all years, you know, that were welcomed back. But I think they did it by decades, the 50s and the 60s and 70s. But you meet somebody from 50 years ago, and if they were a year younger or a year older than you, you just say, oh, well, I don't remember that person at all. That person was, you know, a kid. It was just a kid. He was a year younger. So you trivialize the other people. Or if they're a year older than you or 2 years older, you think of them as adults. And I mean, you get that. You're very conscious of the differentiation, but that even 1 or 2 years does. And with you and your brother, it was 3 years, or almost
3 and
4.
1/2.
3 and 1/2, yeah. So it was quite a bit.
It's quite a bit, especially when he's the younger one. If he had been the older one, I would have looked up to him and...
Yeah, and he might have been protective, but he actually used to play tricks on you, didn't he? You write up about how he taught you, or I think we talked about before, you wanted to learn how to drive, and he
Lord.
would just...
My parents, well, that car thing was very interesting today, because my dad always kept up on the latest thing. I mean, we were the first people in Waterloo to have a radio.
Mm-hmm.
And we had people line up in the street, take turns to come in, and we'd give them each 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Just to listen, because it was so strange. They just couldn't believe it until they saw it with their own eyes. And what I was good.
But then learning how to drive.
And so when it came along to the first cars and all, and of course my dad had to have the biggest and the best. And I can't tell you now what kind of a car it was. I think it was a Buick.
Yeah. Well,
and it was
big.
big.
Yeah.
And I can remember sitting in the back seat when my dad was driving. And the seats were so high, and I was afraid that when he went over a bump, we didn't have good streets either, went over a bump, that I could be
thrown out
of the car. And so I'd hang on to the F. But now what was I going to tell you?
And then your brother was supposed to teach you how to drive in that.
Oh, so my dad, Frederick just pounded him until he taught him to drive. But he couldn't really, because he was under 16. You were not supposed to drive a car until you were 16. And I was 16. This was before I went away to school, so I must have been going on 18. And my mother knew that I should learn to drive, just as much as Peter did, as Frederick did. And so she kept hounding, and my dad didn't have the time, because getting that paper, and with all it is he worked from morning till night every day, and he didn't have time to do that, and didn't want to, you know.
Yeah.
And so they told Frederick it was his job to teach me to drive. And I never learned, because every time they would, pound us until we get in the car. He was in the driver's seat, I was in the front seat. And I had to keep the front door open and one leg out. That's I don't remember why he was thinking he was the one that was going to have the accident. I don't know. I can't remember how it went. But anyway, he had no intention of teaching me to drive. and you know, he was the younger brother, and he was nasty about all that stuff. We had nothing in common and could care less, and I didn't really care. I didn't want the responsibility. It was a big responsibility. If you learned to drive the car, then you had to take your mother where she wanted to go, and she'd be on your neck. Don't do that, do that.
Well, yes,
you know.
backseat driving. And, well, your brother was still too young to have to haul him around anywhere, though, because he...
Yes, they let you learn to drive it. They just hadn't made laws about
Right.
the age limits and all that yet. It was a very new thing.
Open, yeah, open rules.
And this was a great big red Buick. And I remember when my dad drove us anywhere, and the idea of a wonderful Sunday for the family was my dad took the Buick and my mother sat in the front seat and the two of us in the back seat hanging onto those rods that came up. And what was I going to say?
Sunday afternoon drive.
And
Would you go off into the country, or?
yeah, and just there were no roads. The roads were all dirt roads everywhere. And they finally put right through our little town. They put the Lincoln Highway, and from then on we were big time.
Yeah.
And everybody started getting cars, and everybody started learning to drive, and it just grew from that. But it was just a completely different world.
Well, yes, first radio in town. That.
Yeah.
So, did you? And you're saying you and your brother didn't share. I mean, like, I know you've got. There's a famous picture of you in there of you going fishing with your girlfriends or friends. I don't know if it was guys and girls.
Well, my dad used to take us fishing. He was a born fisherman. He loved to go fishing, just in the rivers.
Mm-hmm.
And they never caught anything. Crappie. I remember that was a fish. But it was just for the fun of it. He loved to go.
Is that the Platte River? Or other local?
The Platte River is the big river, but most of these were the Elkhorn River,
mm-hmm.
and there is another name in my mind somewhere. But all of that meant nothing to me. I didn't. We had one big lake, and when I got to be 16, my dad bought me, but it was really for the use of all the people in high school, really. A rowboat, and they taught us all how to go on the rope.
Use oars to make it go.
And we would. That was a big deal. The older people always had somebody out there in case somebody went over, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a shallow lake, but it was just perfect for that person use.
So did you go fishing out there with it?
And they all did, but not close to home. Not me.
Yeah.
That was disgusting. I didn't care anything about fishing. But the men loved fish, and my dad's ideal vacation, which he never got, you know. He worked all the time. But if he could take a weekend off and go up into Minnesota for real fishing.
Uh-huh.
And that was a treat that he had maybe 2 or 3 times in his life.
Drive all the way to Minnesota?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long way. 1,000 miles.
From Nebraska?
Yeah. Well, not that.
It wasn't that.
Couple 500 miles, yeah.
We were up in the middle of Nebraska.
Yeah.
Up one state, a little over a bit.
Yeah. But, yeah, snowy country up there. Okay, well that's your brother. So we've done your brother. That's wrapping this one up. Let me just make sure we. Oh yeah, it's still going strong.
It's a
Good battery.
shame that we don't have a bigger family.